We've talked about in this interview so far the nature of the controversy economy, the social media, how comedians and politicians have integrated themselves. How much is all of this feeding into your decision to end WTF later this year?
I don't really think that fed into much of it. There's no sense of defeat with me and Brendan. It's not like, we've been beaten. We've done 16 years of this in a very specific way. And, we did something kind of amazing and kind of groundbreaking, and it's a great body of work. And we, in the last few years, we kind of, earned our keep for it, that we were rewarded for it. So it really just comes down to the fact that, if we're just doing it because we do it, is that a reason to keep doing it? We were never in the business of content providing or chasing anything. We remained audio because we believe that audio is still the most intimate format, and that the way you can sort of finesse it is unique. So this is not. The weird thing that people think when people talk on mics is like, oh, they're just talking. No, we crafted, in a very specific and nuanced way, because of the way Brendan produces, each, 1,600 and some odd unique portraits of people of a time and the arc of my life. So some of it is just exhaustion. But another of it is that it's not the political climate, but it is the sort of oversaturated thing of so much content and things out there where everything sort of, reaches a level that's not great. Everyone's lowering the bar for almost everything. And, amateurs have taken over the world. And in a way that's not good because it plays into anti-elitism, anti-Hollywood, anti-art. So, that thing is happening. Whereas, like, if we stopped, and we've done great work and look at it as a body of work, that if we stop, then we guarantee our legacy.
Yeah.
And, for whoever cares. But to us, it's important that, we are tired. We have done great work. But it will be interesting to see what happens when I have that world freed up. It might be terrible. I might lose my mind. I'll definitely do comedy. I might end up talking on a certain level. I know I have the weight of my particular fans need to feel consoled or seen by the way I talk, and that's probably the hardest thing. But I'm not feeling any real regret about stopping because it's a long run, dude. And the only reason that stopping something freaks people out is they don't understand why.
Yeah.
Well, when you do a body of work that has maintained its integrity and quality for as long as we have, the risk of, not being as passionate or just seeing it as something you do or a job and what that might imply in terms of quality or, your own kind of like exhaustion or just, feeling like it's a job, what that'll imply, or what that'll do to it. And also the idea of like, like, oh, are they still doing it? It's a very interesting thing because Stern talked about it. And I think the one regret I have is hanging it on burnout. I mean, burnout is real, and we definitely have that because we're a two-man operation. We're not great at delegating because we're crazy workaholic, kind of. But I think the interesting thing is Stern is like, he said on his show, it's like, wow, if Maron's burned out, well, I must be dead. And he doesn't realize the irony of that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I don't want that.
Yeah.
And I was never as big as him, but still, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's like it's similar to, I think a lot of people's response is like, then just do one episode a week.
Sure. I mean, that's true. But I think that ultimately, again, to sort of chase the requirements of, an audience in relation to content, that, we don't want to half-ass it. We did a thing. Brendan, wants, time. I want time. That, I know it's going to be disappointing to some people, but I think there is a benefit that overrides my personal feelings in terms of, having a body of work that lives, as opposed to an ongoing thing that becomes less a body of work and just a dry,
just the thing.
A thing. Yeah.
Yes, I think it is now. It reminds people that it is work, that it is a piece, that it is a deliberate construction, and not just, it's just an extension of whatever.
It's just radio.
Yeah.
Or just like, guys talking on mics, you're talking about, somehow or another, we've evolved into a massive media culture of kind of mid-level afternoon drive time radio personalities. I mean, it's just, I talk about this, and I don't know that I've been very clear about it. It's like, it's just enough talking.
Yeah.
You flip around, and it's just like there's just hundreds of sets of 2 to 3 white guys sitting behind microphones, talking about the last time they shit their pants as adults, or whether or not they, use socks when they're masturbating. It's like, how much, and that's just,
sure, yeah.
It lowers the bar of the expectation. So now that that's been diminished, and that though, WTF was, at the beginning and maintained its thing, there's no way you're going to be able to kind of not, you don't want to drown in that.
Yeah. I have to do my due diligence. I'm going to run through names, and you can tell me if you think they'll be on in the last few episodes.
Okay.
Steve Martin.
I don't know. It hasn't really come up. He was very, but again, because everyone talks so much now, and now everyone's got a podcast, it seems like a lot of people that were, more specific about what their needs were and coming on, are just, blathering on everywhere. I don't know. It hasn't come up.
Jon Stewart.
Well, I don't think that'll ever happen. And I just talked about my experience with him on All Things Considered, I don't know if they'll use it or not, but I think that I out of my own really self-admitted petty insecurity over amount of time, and through a certain amount of coincidental, events, I don't know that that'll ever come around.
Adam Sandler.
I'd like that. I don't really quite know why he hasn't necessarily. I would hope it's not because he still holds a grudge against me for something. But every time I've seen him, he's been very nice.
I mean, there was an article where someone wrote up one of the many times where it comes up where you're a photograph, and his publicist said, like, he intends to be on the show, but I don't know what that actually means. But
I'll look into that.
Yeah. Dave Chappelle.
I don't see that happening.
Why?
I don't know. I don't know how to do it. Like I've offered to him to his face years ago, and I just think he's in some other different world, and I don't know. I mean, I'll reach out. That wouldn't be bad. I wouldn't mind it, but I think we just sort of gave up on it. And I think he may be always on the list, but I'll make sure he's still on the list.
Yeah, it just seems like of the time that defined the last 15 years of comedy, you and that show, and in so much the show is a portrait of comedy during this sort of ascent of what comedy.
Well, that would be interesting, because I think at his best he is a real thinker.
Yeah.
Decisions he's made to me are something questionable, and that could be talked about. But I do think at his best, when he's not just trying to be shocking, he's got a very sophisticated way of structuring humor.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in the Are We Good documentary that's coming out, or that was filmed of you, there is a moment where I don't even know what you're commenting about, but you're talking about Dave Chappelle, and there is a feeling of like everything in the world is going on, and he's spending an hour and 10 minutes talking about trans people again. And it does seem like there's a frustration you have as a person who, I think, like me, believes he has the ability to be one of the great comedians.
Sure. Yeah, I think that, like, if you could kind of dig in there, it's something personal.
Yeah.
Whether it's a community-based prejudice or a religious-based prejudice, but it seems personal.
Yeah. One other thought I was reading the Defector article by Diana Moskowitz about WTF that it seemed you were really touched by.
Yeah.
And she did point out two episodes that I thought were right to point out, which was the Ian McKellen episode, which I remember distinctly. I still have a sense memory of the ending where he reads,
Yeah,
or memorizes, just does Shakespeare.
Recites.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you also pointed out that Louis C.K. is a major part of the history of the show. The episode where you guys confront each other about the history of your friendship was once called the greatest podcast episode ever, and I think will be remembered as seminal. You had him on other times, and also even that your response to when the New York Times story came out is also remembered as sort of one of the things distinct about the show. Is there a world which he would come
And
back?
it was diplomatic.
Yeah.
I don't know, because I think he kind of dug in to his position on it. And, I've seen him a couple times lately, and he's been perfectly nice, which was not always the case. And he seems to be doing fine comedically. It would really be whether I was willing to understand why he felt betrayed or mad at me. And then, where do we go from there? And I don't know that it's my job. I think he has settled into his position on it. And I don't think it's, I would have to think about what we could do there, because I think he believes that he was, the victim of that. And in relation to other monsters who were in that spectrum, I understand his point of view, but I don't know where we go with the conversation.
Yeah.
And I don't know that he'd be willing.
Yeah. Obviously you don't have to reveal who the last episode is. You can if you want to, but I assume you won't. But
I mean, it might be just me.
Yeah. Well, that discussion is like, what do you want the last episode to feel like?
Well, I think it would be interesting. Like, I think we've talked about the idea that if Obama wanted to come back and just have a conversation about where he's at now, that would be interesting.
Yeah.
Short of
making
that,
a sketch show. Do you see?
Yeah,
him and Larry David are making a sketch show together.
Yeah, there's something, okay, but there's also something disappointing about it.
Mm-hmm.
But to explore, his idea or notion of what's happening culturally and politically in light of his belief system around politics would be interesting. But I don't know what the last episode will be.
Yeah. I get that. It gets a sense of what you want it to be like. One thing I was thinking about I'll miss is, and maybe this is morbid or this is the nature, when people die, the tradition of
posting
the episode. And there's something about that I've always, I mean, that is another thing you pioneered. It's not a thing that people focus on, but there is something about that is unlike really, like, obviously there's been tributes that, like, someone dies, The Tonight Show, they'll show a picture of them on The Tonight Show, something like that. But, like, there's something different about those things where you really... And...
Because they're heard differently.
Yeah.
And they're which I think is a testament to the type of work that Brendan and I did.
Do you think you'll miss that aspect of it?
Of posting dead people?
Yeah.
Well, I think they're available now. I mean, a lot of those episodes, they're all available. And, at the time where we were doing that, we had to pull them out and kind of do that. But I do think that, that was purely in memoriam.
Yeah.
Because I think that, things blow by us and you think, well, that's a good talk. But, once someone's gone and you listen to Patrice or you listen to Norm or you listen to, any of the ones that we did that passed, you're like, you're like, oh, this is really him.
Yeah.
And you don't really notice that when they're still alive.
Yeah, yeah.
You're kind of like, wow, I never knew that about him. But then when you listen to him when they're spirits and, that episode becomes... something that transcends, just the conversation where you're like, oh, I could see where his heart's at or where, his feelings at or how he responds in the moment and how he sees himself. It becomes a very different thing. Yeah. I guess I'll miss it, but I do know they're all going to be available.
Yeah. I can't remember what, I think on a podcast you mentioned that the two events in your life that were sort of shocking to a point where you had to reflect about what you wanted from life and who you were your second divorce, which the sort of difficulty of that divorce and your financial situation, out of desperation, you created WTF. The other one was Lynn's passing.
Yeah.
And I do think in many ways, Lynn, the arc of you processing on that on air was the culmination of a lot of the project that you were working on in WTF.
Yeah.
How do you think about it? Is partly that time and then moving on through the show also make it sort of not a cleaner ending, but sort of a ending of sort of what you were going for, of like sort of who you were at that time period, and now you're sort of moving to a different time period?
Well, I think that there also comes a point where I would like to, live the life that I have landed in because of what I've done.
Yeah.
And the process of, moving through my life publicly as I did in a 90% kind of, open way.
Yeah.
Like it's definitely, I've arrived at a place, and also through age. And there is an element of me that's sort of like, well, I've arrived in myself, in my body, and the work of that and the journey of that is public.
Mm-hmm.
And how do I exist in life, without this? Because it is a big part of my social life. It's a big part of me, getting out of myself and talking to other people. It's a huge part of my entire being, and out of it came a lot of things, and people have moved through, divorces and breakups and deaths and romances and other issues I have had, and I've moved through them too. But I think one of the things that happens with, I think, almost anybody is that, yesterday starts to seem very far away, because, the life you live is generally pretty mundane. It's a bunch of tasks and things that you have to get done and stuff. And then when you put stuff out in the world, you're not really sitting with yourself too long, but other people are.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is some part of me that like it would maybe want to just sit with myself and see what comes of that.